Sometimes it's the way that we run the household. It's broken. There's no consistency.
I guess Timmy is dying next week, right? So we're gonna be bringing out the old cast of Lassie and knocking them off one by one.
Some say these two trainers were quietly in the shadows. Robert Weatherwax, last of the legendary Lassie trainers, from the world's greatest movie dog training family, was quietly hidden in his TV work. And Christoph Clugston, elite action K9 trainer, was traveling from the sub-zero Arctic to the sweltering jungle heat, training dogs on 3 continents. But a chance meeting changed all of that. Now, Robert and Christoph have joined forces and they're breaking the silence. For the first time, the secretive and hidden world of the movie dog trainer and the science of the elite tactical trainer will be revealed. That's right, they are out of the shadows. Welcome to Tactical Practical.
This episode, we're going to be talking about some major problems that everybody encounters. This is one of the biggest problems that dog owners are talking about and searching for solutions. And that first one is jumping up on you, jumping up on other people. A lot of people don't understand why this happens, which is one of the first things you need to understand, because the dog is not doing it, again, to spite you. The dog is not doing it out of anger. The dog is not doing it out of any sort of bad intentions. The dogs are jumping up because they want to be up closer to your face. They want to greet you. All canines want to greet each other if they're part of the familiar pack, to use that word, by looking at their face, getting close to each other's faces. Of course, you know that they smell each other, but this is where they're going to go. So they want to get closer to your face. They know that you're much taller than they are. So this is one of the reasons that they're coming up off the ground. And a lot of people don't like this. A lot of people blame dogs. A lot of people return dogs because of this fact. Some people say that the elderly or small children can't handle the bigger dogs. When they jump up, they get knocked off their feet. So this is something that we're going to delve into. And then we have also another big problem that people want a solution for. We'll get to that one later on in this episode. But right now, we're going to delve into this, and we're going to hand this one over to Robert because he likes to solve these solutions, and I'll come back in with talking about some things maybe he didn't talk about with this. But Robert, jumping up, I know you have a lot of clients that have you work on this, so how do you do it?
Well, when I arrive, obviously, most of the time I'll be talking to them, making a little bit of small talk, and I notice that the dog is jumping on me, and they'll typically say, well, one of the problems I have is what you're experiencing right now. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I noticed that. The dog's jumping on me. Not that unusual. First thing I do is I ask them if they have a training collar and leash, because I think that that's pretty useful. Mainly because it takes the hands out of the equation. You could start to use the leash if you have to make a correction. So once we have put on a training collar and leash, then what I typically do is I'll start, I probably don't have to do anything. The dog is probably still jumping on me. So at that point, I'll start using a forearm. Like Christoph mentioned, they want to be as close to you as possible. They've been building this up all day for how many hours? Waiting for you to come home. There's all the anticipation of you getting out of your car, and you forget how much a dog hears. So they heard you when you pulled up, and they heard you when you got out of your car and you jingled your keys, and so all that anticipation is built up. So you kind of have to expect that. And if you want to, I tell my class a lot to come down. So it's like that Kenny Loggins song, meet me halfway. That's kind of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to meet halfway with the dog, where we're coming down to them. And they're coming up in a way that's not blocking us. It's not intrusive. It's not invading our space. So we're letting them know that, hey, I see you. So it's really your choice whether you want to be the person who makes their dog wait until you've put the groceries away and settle down before you greet your dog, or you want to be one of those people who greets the dog right away. That's your choice. But you can't be both. You got to be one or the other. The guy who greets the dog first thing, or the one who purposely makes their dog wait. What can you say as far as that topic, Christoph?
Yeah, okay. So there's some important things that you mentioned and some things you didn't mention, but kind of that's there that need to be said. And that's using the arm, as he's talking about, sort of like blocking the dog. is good because you don't want to use the knee. A lot of people teach put the knee up, or actually to knee the dog, and you can seriously hurt a dog that way. By the way, if you catch them with their ribs exposed or in the chest, some of the dogs, depending on their age and their size, you can seriously hurt a dog. A lot of people prescribe this as a way to stop dogs from jumping up. It's the knee 'em when they do it. Don't do that. Do not do that. And one of the things that Robert said, again, that there's a theme we've said many podcasts, and that is dogs are all or nothing. So you can't switch it back and forth. It's yes or no, and so you make the dog wait, or you immediately greet the dog. And getting lower is a key, is a big key. And you want to reward the dog when the dog is all fours on the ground. And something that we talked about on another podcast, but this can work as you're doing this. I'm pretty sure that Robert does this when he's training dogs for people, and that is, we're going to use our marks. We're going to use our touch pads, another term for them, and use that so that the dog learns to stay there without coming up, and the dog gets a heavy reinforcement history again while staying all four. 4 on the floor. This is a memory technique you can use. 4 on the floor gets a reward, gets reinforced. 4 on the floor. 2 on the floor does not get rewarded. Now there are certain techniques, and I really don't want to go into them, for dogs that are more aggressive with the jumping up, or you're having some problems with. That's what you come to us for. I don't really feel comfortable about handing out certain techniques that we might use, because we have the discretion to know when to use it and which dogs to use it with. It's not something you just put out there for just to use because it has the nuclear option or something. That this is something that is vitally important, because again, we've talked about this in a lot of our podcasts, so go back and listen to other podcasts, because everything's connected, and it's all about creating this history with the dog, and having the dog learn a stable, secure environment, and basically the policies, the rules, the laws, whatever you want to call it, of your household, or how the dog lives, and then the dog will adapt to this. It's the back and forth changing it. And again, the dogs, I will bring this up because I'm certain Robert has to do this when he's training dogs for people. They might start treating you that way, or the person, the trainer. They won't be jumping up on that person, but that hasn't been generalized, transferred to another person. So it has to bring in other members of the family. A lot of times he's training dogs, family dogs. And Robert, don't you have to do that? I mean, I wanted to throw that in there. Don't you have to bring in?
Yeah, what I do is that's why they always ask me, typically, if they have a family, they ask if all the family should be there when I do the training. And depending on what it is, I may or may not need everybody, but I'll like as many people as possible from the family. So let's say we have a husband, a wife, a son, and a daughter. One's in high school, one of the kids, and the other kid is in college, but still lives at the house. They come in at all different times. So what I'll do is I'll start to simulate the situation. I'll have me walking in first. A lot of times, from a distance, after obviously the leash is on, and the main thing about all of this correctional training is not to use the hands to make the correction. You can't reach in, grab the dog by the scruff of the neck. You just can't do that, okay? You have to be able to have something to grab, and that's what the leash is for. So if you're approaching the door and you're behind the dog, the leash is going to be straggling behind the dog. So as you open the door, that would be a good time to grab the leash. So you can apply a correction, and the person who's coming in the door, me in the first example, I'm not going to give any attention to the dog. I'm just going to act like I'm talking to them. Hey, how's the weather, or what's going on? Kind of ignore the dog and let them apply all the corrections and the rewards as the dog is calm, watching the conversation evolve. Then as time goes on, I'll switch. I'll say, okay, Mom, now it's your turn. She goes out, and we do the same thing. Now, for distance correction, sometimes I'll use a correction tool like a throw chain. But typically the goal is to throw the throw chain either towards the door, where it makes contact with the door and not the dog, or behind the dog near his rear feet on the ground. So there's no intent to make contact with the dog other than incidental contact, because it's the surprise that's going to make the dog react and go, what was that? and then you come in with the reward. So there's a couple different ways. I'll set up different scenarios. I'll have the client behind the dog. I'll have me off in a distance using the correction chain, but the owner will be applying the reward in all cases. So whether they're reacting to my chain or reacting to the correction with the leash, the owner will give the reward. And then, of course, the person comes through, same scenario, and then we switch to the son, and then maybe to the husband. It doesn't really matter which order we do it in. We just want to go in a rotation.
Yeah, I was gonna let people guess on that, which one that they thought that it might be, because this is definitely something that so many people talk about. They bring up and they ask if they see you somewhere out in whatever Lowe's. A lot of dog trainers hang out in Lowe's, and people know that.
Including me.
For example, or some other places in the United States that are, because in Europe there are more places you can go with dogs than in the United States, for example. But anyway, so they'll ask you because they're trying to training information from you basically, and we really need to see. I just want to throw this out there when I'm talking about this. We really need to see the individual dog. We need to know the individual situation with the people, because all the dynamics are very important. Because we don't just have a generic approach, especially the two of us. We're very individualized. That's one of our big differences. The movie, TV, tactical methods that we have is very about the dog, this particular dog, this specific dog. So we need to know that situation. Yes, we know the causes generally for it, but it manifests itself differently. It's just like, hey, if you're going to look for shoes, you may be looking for running shoes or whatever, but your size is particular to you. And so you need to know that, don't you? So we can't just buy you a shoe because we don't know your size. So that's my analogy here. But counter surfing, as people want to call it, getting on, especially in the kitchen, and getting up on the counter. If they're looking for food, this is basically they are looking for food. Now, this is one of the big ones. There are a lot of ways to handle this again, and I want to say that I use specific things for this that are a little bit different than some people, but I like to be very specific and use it for dogs that I meet in person. Generically, again, we don't want to let the dogs get up on the counters. That's one of the first things. So we can try to make the counters off limits. That's one of the big global things to do, and that's same thing that Robert's saying with the jumping up, and also the place, the marks, and the touch pads. They all work together. So if we can make this that the dog, and you have to watch the dog from a distance, and then I'm going to hand it to Robert because I don't want to get into specifics about everything, but one of the things, again, you want to watch the dog from a distance and see if the dog you want to set the dog up for failure, basically. Leave something on the counter that the dog will want to get to, and then see how the dog is going to jump up. Basically, probably going to have to jump up, get on the counter, or get up on it and knock things over and try to get to the food. And we're going to stop this with a disruption technique, and that would be Robert likes to use the throw chain. I use voice quite a bit too, and then there are some other things. Some people like to use like a tin can filled with pennies, for example, and you throw that because it makes a hell of a lot of noise. It's another thing. It's all about disrupting the dog, because sound is something that disrupts dogs' movement patterns. Anyway. So, and then we're going to reinforce when the dog is on the ground, not when the dog's getting up, and we want to make that a constant. The dog can never get up on the couch. We can never allow this to happen because this is something that's just too difficult. It's called discrimination. The discrimination about, I can get on the counter sometimes, I can't get on it other times. It's too difficult for 98% of all dogs, so don't try to do this at all. So you don't want the dog to get up on the counters anywhere at all. So that's one of the first generic things that I'll throw out there. Robert, how do you handle the counter surfing?
Well, it's a lot like everything, which is why movie training comes in so handy for what I do in my private training practice, is because it's all about simulation. As we simulated the dogs jumping on people when you came through the door, we're also going to simulate situations where the dog would be tempted to go onto the counter. As Christoph mentioned, we were going to have maybe place some food up there, place something up there that they want. A lot of times what happens is you'll be too far away, and the dog with the leash and collar on, of course, when you're doing this training, because then you have more range as far as what you can grab before the dog actually grabs that thing off the counter before you can get there and wins the battle, right? So we don't want that. So if you're real slow of foot, there's a little trick you can do. Take some food or whatever, like meat or something, and tape it down with Scotch tape. So that way the dog can't just lick it with their tongue and grab it and be gone. They have to actually work at it. By then, you can surely be in there in time to make a correction. It can be anything, like Christoph said. It could be an air horn. It could be a squirt gun. I mean, whatever it is, you can use a lot of different things. I use a throw chain because it's something I can carry with me all the time. It's kind of multi-purpose. It's like a Swiss Army knife for me. I mean, the whole can of pennies thing is real nice. That's the old day, the old school method. But the problem is sometimes the lid comes off the can. Sometimes the can hits the dog. So there's a lot of things. I like the throw chain because I can control where it lands. That's very important because I've become very accurate at missing the dog. Because that's not really what the goal is. If you look online and they talk about throw chains, they'll tell you that the object is to hit the dog. But now with everybody having linoleum floors and wooden doors, there's a lot of noises we can make that will distract the dog. So we want to set up those situations. So what we'll do is we'll put some food up there. We'll clearly let the dog see, and then we'll just act like the absent-minded people that we normally are, and we'll go in the other room and start to turn on the TV. But somebody will be looking back, ready to strike on the dog when he makes his move. Now, if you're close enough, you can use the leash, correct them, down, whatever command you use to signify down. Once they reach down, you tell them good. Since food was the object, we're not going to use food to reward them for not eating food. So I don't use food for this exercise. If food is the goal, I just use praise, and a lot of it. I'll double whatever you normally give them. And of course, that leads into a lot of other things, just like counter surfing, where you're simulating the thing that they want, the thing they want the most on the counter. You put it there on purpose because you're baiting them. Because the only way you can fix something that happens when you're not there is to make it happen when you are there. So that's what we're doing. We're inducing bad behavior. We want it to occur so that we can nip it in the bud, because you can't come back 3 hours later after you've eaten an entire turkey off your counter and say, this was bad. You did this 3 hours ago, but this is bad. They don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. Somebody else ate the turkey. It wasn't me. Okay? So just be very consistent about that. And remember, too, when you have, shoes. That's another big one I hear about. Like, my dog chews on my shoes. He chews on the remote control. I'm like, well, show me all those things. Bring all those things out here, and we'll put it out in a pile right in the living room, and we'll just spread it out everywhere, and we'll just take target practice at anything he goes after. And then we'll run in with a reward. And these are non-food items. But, you can use food to reward non-food items. So I'll go back to using food again immediately after that distraction lands. And, we're setting them up, and we're watching them because, the only way to fix it is to catch it. It's the same with anything. There are some remote ways to teach dogs not to dig in the backyard, things like that. If your dog stays in the backyard unattended for long periods of time, that's another thing you can do unattended. But if you are there, once again, if you can catch them in the act, if you can create a situation where they're going to want to dig, whatever it is that you're trying to prevent, try to create it happening when you can correct it. And then that will carry over to those times when you're not around and they start to go to that place to get the shoe. And then they think, wait a second, what happened last time I did this? Dogs pattern very quickly. And, you can start making it more tantalizing. You can, you see people all the time that take a lot of pride where they put a goodie on their dog's nose and they tell them not to eat it. I mean, that's just control. And it's a good little exercise, but it's really just an exercise in control. And that's what all this is. It's taking the wino to the bar and not letting him drink, right? That's what we're doing. We're just we're playing poker with our dogs. We're bluffing them into thinking that they can do something that they really can't do. Wouldn't you agree, Christoph?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. Now, what we're doing is we're giving an overview. we're giving bullet points in the thing, but we're not going into the actual detail of the process because there's a lot to the process. And again, it's going to change a little bit on each individual dog, how you're going to progress. So the progression is a little bit different, but we have not covered all the steps. There's a lot of process here about starting out, making it, doing it simply, and then increasing the allure, the attraction, making it more irresistible for the dog so that we can build it up. It's called proofing. Most people call this proofing. We're proofing the dog so the dog will be reliable in this situation, will not get on the counter, will not get the food or the shoes. Is going to use that as an example also. But there's a process to this, and all these steps that we didn't talk about and all the things in between here, they're crucial. And that's what makes a really good dog trainer, is knowing that and knowing how to weave it all together seamlessly, more or less. And this is a thing where if you have problems with that, come to us, because that's what we're here for. We're not here to give you, this is not, hey, this is how you handle this completely. No, this is an overview of the process that's involved, and then for the details, and especially for your own individual dog, if you want your dog cured of this, come to us, because we can handle this, as we were saying, especially with the video technology now. We can do it distance through video lessons, as it were. Of course, it's always the best in person, but barring that, you can do it through video. But I want to be really certain about this, because a lot of people are beginning to think that, hey, we're handing out teaching segments. We're handing out the bullet points to the process so that you can understand the process and also understand the psychology of the dog, because this is one of the things you need to know ahead of time. Is you need to know the psychology of the dog. Why is the dog doing this? There's a motivating factor. There's always a motivation that's involved, and for us to change that, we got to know why is the dog doing this. Because most things we were talking about, Robert and I talked about this a little bit in another podcast, is that everything a dog is doing is because of the dog's biology, because the dog does it to gain something. And so why is he getting on the counter? Because he wants the food. Why is he going for the shoe? Because he wants something to chew, especially if they're in the teething. And I want to add this because it just reminded me of this. This goes back to where I was talking in another podcast about management versus training. Management. Put your damn shoes up, especially when the dog is in the teething phase. Don't make these things. Okay, would you leave a cash lying around all over your house and then have a party with people coming over, and some of them you may not know? Would you think that everybody's going to honor your money and not take it? I don't think so. So the smart thing to do is to put the money away, right? So the same thing, put the shoes away, put these things away, so that the dog is not tempted in these situations. And then we will create the situations. And this is definitely, I'm pretty 100% sure about this. Robert's telling them too, his clients too, look, you need to control the situation, because you need to control the situation so that when the only time that the dog is tempted is when you're there, right there. So you start building up this history that the dog is like, it's there, but I can never have it. But I can never have it because they're always gonna stop me. They're always gonna stop me. They're always gonna stop me. That's what he was talking about by playing poker, by the way. Somebody wrote that they didn't really understand his analogy to poker, but that's what it is. So you're doing this, you're building up a history that the dog thinks, oh, he's incredible. He knows everything I'm going to do, and so I can't do this. Yeah, that's what we wanted to do. But to do that, you have to control the environment, and controlling the environment, again, is management. So all of this connects, and I just want everyone to be certain that while we're giving out pointers, we're not telling you all the steps. That's crucial. That's why you come to us, because we can't do it. We need to know your dog. We need to see your situation, and it's much longer than we're talking. We would be on here 5 or 6 hours to do this, but that's not what it's for. And if you want to learn from us, of course, you can do that. You can come to us and do that. But I want to throw that in there because there's a lot of people asking me, and I just want to clear this up so it'll stop some questions ahead of time. And I think that's crucial to know, because this is one of the things that pay your dues for. Robert spent a lot of years doing this and working with other people's dogs, working with his dad's dogs, working with other movie dogs. And this is the experience, operational experience that you get from doing that. And seeing what works for him and creating his own method of his own version of the weather wax, to say it. And I'm not trying to talk for him right now, but I'm just saying this has molded his own style, and it's working. So anyway. Robert, you got anything you want to add here? Because I think this has been pretty. I want to keep it poof, poof, poof.
Yeah. I'm pretty much done. But I just wanted to mention that I do address a lot of these problems in my book, Training Your Dog the Weatherwax Way.